I fell for my married massage client who lied about being divorced, caught him cheating years later, teamed up with his actual ex-wife, and ruined his life. Now, he's jobless and homeless. So, let's dive into the shit show that's been my life for the past few years. My name's Seren, and I'm a massage therapist. Yeah, I know, everyone always says, what a relaxing job. But trust me, it can be a lot more stressful than it sounds. It all started when I met Dafydd. Dafydd was one of my regular clients, tall, dark, and handsome, with this charming Welsh accent that could make anyone weak in the knees. He had this mysterious vibe, but he was always respectful and polite. He told me he was divorced, raising 2 kids on his own. It tugged at my heartstrings. Being the sucker for a sob story that I am, I started to see him as more than just a client. One session, after a particularly rough week for him, he broke down. He talked about his ex-wife, Karis, who he said left him for another man. He was vulnerable, and I felt this intense urge to comfort him. One thing led to another, and before I knew it, we were sneaking around, having secret dates, and making out in my car like teenagers. I was in deep. Dafydd made me feel special, like I was the only one who understood him. I was sure he was my soulmate, but boy, was I wrong. Our relationship went on like this for about 2 years. We were careful, or so I thought. Dafydd would spend weekends with me, saying his kids were with their mom. We'd talk about our future together, and I even started looking at houses for us. But there was always this nagging feeling in the back of my mind. He never introduced me to his kids, and I never met any of his friends. One night, we were out at a quiet pub in the middle of nowhere, having a great time. Out of the blue, this woman walks up to us. She's stunning, with fiery red hair and this fierce look in her eyes. "Dafydd, what the hell are you doing here?" she demands. Turns out this woman was Karis, his ex-wife. Except they weren't actually divorced. They were still very much married. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. Dafydd tried to explain, saying they were separated and going through a rough patch, but I wasn't having any of it. I stormed out of the pub, heartbroken and furious. For weeks I tried to get over him, but I couldn't shake the betrayal. Every time I thought about him, my blood boiled. I had to know more, so I did some digging. Social media, mutual friends, even hiring a private investigator. What I found was worse than I imagined. Dafydd was living a double life. Not only was he still married, but he had other side chicks too. I felt like such a fool. In my quest for the truth, I reached out to Karis. At first, she was understandably hostile, but once I showed her the evidence I had gathered, she broke down. What? She had no idea Dafydd was seeing other women, let alone someone like me. We cried together, bonded over our shared betrayal, and decided we weren't going to let Dafydd get away with this. Karis was a firecracker. She had this no-nonsense attitude and wasn't afraid to get her hands dirty. Together, we concocted a plan to expose Dafydd for the lying, cheating bastard he was. We started by gathering more evidence. I kept in touch with Dafydd, pretending to forgive him and be the naive girl he thought I was. Meanwhile, Karis played the dutiful wife, giving him no reason to suspect a thing. It was like a spy movie. We recorded phone calls, took screenshots of text messages, and even set up cameras to catch him in the act. Once we had enough, we unleashed hell. We sent everything to his family, friends, and even his workplace. The fallout was immediate. His reputation was in tatters, and he was fired from his job. Turns out, his boss wasn't too keen on having a womanizer on the payroll. Dafydd tried to play the victim, claiming we were out to ruin his life for no reason. But the evidence was undeniable. His friends abandoned him, his family disowned him, and his kids wanted nothing to do with him. It was satisfying, but it also felt hollow. I had loved him, and now I was watching him self-destruct. Karis and I stayed close. She was going through her own shit, dealing with the divorce and trying to rebuild her life. We supported each other, shared our stories, and became close friends. She was my rock, and I was hers. Together, we started to heal. Daffod, on the other hand, spiraled. He lost his house, his car, everything. He was living out of a suitcase, crashing on couches, and begging for handouts. Every time I saw him, he looked worse. Part of me felt guilty, but I reminded myself of all the lies, the manipulation, and the heartache he caused. He deserved every bit of it. Years passed, and Daffod's situation didn't improve. He became a ghost, drifting through life with no purpose. Meanwhile, Karis and I thrived. She started her own business, and I opened my own massage clinic. We found happiness in our friendship and the new lives we built. Then, one day, I ran into Daffod. He was standing outside a soup kitchen, looking worn and defeated. He saw me and tried to approach, but I turned my back and walked away. He didn't deserve my sympathy or my forgiveness. I had moved on, and so had Karis. The last I heard, Daffod was still struggling, unable to find steady work or a place to live. It's a sad end for someone who once had so much potential. But in the end, he dug his own grave. He lied, cheated, and broke hearts without a second thought. Karma finally caught up with him, and there was no escaping it. Karis and I were living our best lives, free from his toxicity. Sometimes we sit back with a glass of wine and laugh about the whole ordeal. It's a reminder that no matter how dark things get, there's always a way out. And sometimes, revenge really is the best medicine.